Yes guys, I'm back with another one, and just gonna have a little look at BTC, have a little look at the levels, see what's going on, see where we're at, have a little look at USDT dominance. I'm also going to be discussing another little thing as well. I'm going to be discussing scalping, and I know a lot of people still have full-time jobs while they're trying to trade, and I think a lot of people get caught up in that. They see the scalping, they think, oh yeah, that's for me. But many people can't be a scalper. I knew what I was when I started trading, tried the scalping. Don't get me wrong, I do every now and again. I will do a little bit of scalping, but it's not for me. Very stressful, very time consuming, and I prefer to put a trade on, leave it to run, and just go on. I will take a couple of TPs along the way, but then as soon as I've had them, my stop loss will eventually go in either profit or break even for that swing trade, and I'll just let it do what it's got to do. So yeah, we will discuss that, but let's get straight into it, guys. So we're on the BTC chart right now, and these levels, perfectly picked levels. I do expect us to have this sort of little bounce here, potentially coming back to this zone around here. This is what I'm looking at. We have that pushback between 70 and 74,000. Take out them late shorters, and then eventually have the final move down. There's one thing that I've been looking at as well, is the screen is going to go white because it's Wall Street cheat sheet. Many people are not going to be looking at this, but you've also got to, you've got to think about that. BTC at the minute has had that major run. It does need this pullback to reset, take a lot of this down in here, chop around here, then reclaim some levels. In my personal opinion, that's what I'm looking into. Don't know what happened there, but that's what I'm going to be looking into with BTC. When everybody thinks, BTC is going to 20k, 15k, I've already started to earn it. I've started to see it on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. I've started to see people saying, oh, BTC is coming down to low 20s. This is where I'm looking, and I'm thinking, I don't think it is. I think we're going to have this sort of move dropping into this zone, and then everybody's going to be like, yeah, let's load up on shorts. And these people, that they're going to be hoping for that drop into the 20s, sideways action, and then a move back up. I think a lot of people are going to get caught out in that move. I really do. I still think this is going to occur where we are at the minute. There's also the 200 EMA that I'm looking at the minute. The way it's moving, and just going on past previous cycles, what we've done before. We've had the curve, and then it starts to flatten out. At the minute, we are starting to flatten out. So, I'm not saying that we will take these lows, but there is a big possibility that these lows can be taken back into this support area. As you all know, I've said in the group that I am slowly accumulating BTC. I'm also slowly accumulating ETH. And I will have a little look at ETH today as well to see what's going on. But we'll go to the cheat sheet. And me personally, I think we are around here. We've had that pullback up. We're going to have the final drop, not the final, the secondary drop like we did. Just looking at BTC, we had the drop. We had the secondary drop that took these lows out. We'll have the push back up, take these highs here. the push back up, take these highs up in here, and then the final drop here, which is going to be a few months. You know, we're going to be waiting a couple of months for that final drop. We'll then get the sideways action, the push away, drop back into the supporting area, which will be here, sideways along here, and then the move away. That's what I think. My personal opinion, we're around this zone at the minute, and we're going to have that little push back towards here, and then the final drop, which, you know, is pretty similar to what I'm looking at. The final drop, take the lows, sideways, push. That's what I'm looking at in BTC at the minute. USDT dominance, that's what I'm looking at in USDT dominance, which will give us that final move away. So we're up, down, sideways, final push, and then we start to break away. In USDT dominance currently, you know, we hold this area, potential push up to this area, and then a move back down. Dominance at the minute, not a lot really going on. I do expect us to potentially have this little push up into this zone and the final drop away, which should give altcoins a little bit of a move away. Me personally, I'm only day trading the altcoins. I'm not right interested in what else. It's, you know, we've got total 2 as well. You know, we're below this high volume node in total 2. Wouldn't surprise me if we do eventually drop back into this zone here and then start to push off again. But I know when total 2 were up in here, even total, the very similar charts, everybody were like, oh, it's going to be going to 5, 6, 7 trillion. Everybody gets caught out every single time. And it's the same every single time. So, you know, and like I said before, this crap here, just ignore it. They're all full of crap. They don't know what they're going on about half the time. ETH at the minute, I do think we get the final push down into these zones here. Hold these zones. So if we go to the weekly chart and actually look at ETH, so, you know, we had this supporting area here in ETH. You know, we had the resistance zone up in here in ETH. If we do get back in there, it wouldn't surprise me if we chop and then drop away. I personally think this zone here is the final drop in ETH. And it wouldn't surprise me if we get this push into here, little fake out, drop down, wick in, and then back up. That's my play in ETH. That's what I'm looking at currently. If we do go any lower, there is another zone a little bit lower down in here. You know, if we can hold that zone there, and like I've said previously, we're going to have a lot of limits that are going to be sat in these zones here. I know Tommy Lee's going to be absolutely pooping his pants at the minute, the way he's going. So is Sailor with BTC. So that's one thing that you need to keep on your mind. You know, them guys, you know, like it's just like BTC. You know, BTC, Sailor sold 32 Bitcoin up here somewhere. And BTC absolutely dropped another 24%. You know, when Sailor's buying 1 million Bitcoin, it's taking months to eventually push 38%. So, you know, everybody's open about Sailor, but that I'd really just ignore what he's doing. That's my personal opinion. I would ignore what the guy's doing. So I wouldn't touch it anymore. So I won't touch it anymore. Let's have a little scan of the stock market. And I still think this is rather overextended. It's just mega overextended at the minute, the stock market. You know, I think you've got like 2 or 3 stocks that are doing this to the S&P 500. Them stocks come in with really bad stats. This market's going to absolutely dump. You know, we've not really officially had the test of this zone here yet, which is a big volume area. You know, you've got your really big volume area there. So I'd really like to see this. You know, you want it to really aggressively slam through there, reject off there, and come back into this zone, which is potentially going to give us time for this 200 EMA to catch up. You know, we're going to have the wick down into there. Everybody's going to think, right, start shorting. And then, you know, it'll reverse and then go again. And that's what's going to take BTC into that next leg. So, you know, food for thought there. Keep an eye on that with the S&P 500. I would not buy it here. You know, if you have a look, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bullish candles popping up in the S&P, and they're not small, they're fairly aggressive. But I don't know whether that's the last, you know, push, and then we have this pullback into this zone here, and then we go again, which will technically coincide with your 20% corrections that you normally do have in the S&P 500. You know, 21% there, 28% there, which is, you know, that's more likely, in my opinion, which will then push the dollar back towards this zone here. You know, the dollar breaks out from there and then pushes back towards this gap that's inside there, taking us back to around 104 to 106 area. That's what I'm looking at in the dollar. Could be something to look at. NQ, you know, NQ's absolutely on a tear. And it's the same as this. There's only like 2 or 3, you know, in the NQ that are actually moving the NQ. It's not like everything's pumping. It's not. Bonds holding above that zone at the minute. You know, it wouldn't surprise me if bonds start to pull off, going back towards potentially 7-8% area in the US 10 yield. Oil starting to pull back now because Trump keeps farting out of his mouth. It's just literally consistent Trump's out of his mouth, and it's, you know, really messing with this chart here. You know, I'd love to see oil go back down to here, because I'd be getting my jerry cans out and I'd be loading up on that diesel and petrol, you know. But I doubt we're probably going to get that move back down in there, if I'm being honest with you. It might settle around $50-ish around here. You know, between $50 and $40. Oil settling around here. And we just get a lot of sideways action while these other charts are doing what they need to do. And like I said, we're going to discuss scalping. So if we look at intraday swings versus scalps, you're never ever, unless you're very, very lucky, gonna catch the major top in some of these charts. So that, you know, I had that marked out on another chart, that there were going to be a top in ETH. You know, everybody were calling for the 10,000 mark. It's going to 10K, it's going to 10K, blah, blah, blah. And I love to hear it. Genuinely, I absolutely love hearing it. Because then that's my signal to be like, right, time to get out here. And if you look, say you've been scalping, scalping, and we can go down into the 4 hour for this. Say you've been scalping all the way down into here. Wouldn't it have just been easier to hold that trade there to here, which is 251 days, and get a potential? I know it's hindsight. You know, say you have shorted it in there, your stop's gone above that high just in case, you know, and your main target's down in here, you know, and you're still holding ETH at the minute. You know, that there is an absolute banger. You know, you've got that on times 10. 72% times 10. You know, you've made a lot of money there. Instead of just scalping these that tiny little move up there, that tiny little move down there, tiny little move up, tiny little move down. Why not just hold the major move instead of thinking, oh yeah, I'm a scalper? You know, you stop loss potentially there. It were only 8%, but your gain is 73%. Wouldn't it make more sense to do that instead of, you know, consistently being sat at a chart for 4 or 5 hours a day, absolutely stressing your eyeballs off, losing your hair? No comment with that. You know, so yeah, like I'm saying, the stress of trying to catch these tiny little moves along the way, is it really worth it? You know, is it really that worth it? And, you know, even if you're on the 4 hour chart and you're looking at the 200 EMA and you think, yeah, you know, potentially we can go long here, blah, blah, blah. It's not, it makes no sense to me. It makes absolutely no sense to me that you would rather get that tiny little 1% move and then, you know, get stopped out at break even every single time when you could literally just be waiting this move. Well, like, I had a coin, Tau. So, you know, day trading this coin. Let me just remove all these a minute. Day trading this coin. So I got a short position in Tau. I think it was somewhere around here. And I were looking for this move back down into this, which was a supporting area down in here, which used to be a resistance area. So I can mark that out. If I mark that out, we can see that, you know, this here, this area, this major area here, was a prior resistance. So all I did was just marked out that area there and thought, right, that could be a potential great short in that zone. And I'm looking at this next area here, which was a resistance, turned into a support. So I had that whole area there marked out. I'm waiting for it to dip. I'm waiting for it to get below this area. Not here, I'm not interested because it is technically in an uptrend. So I'm not interested there. So I'm waiting for this to get below here, dip below that zone. You know, I've had 1 tag, 2 tag. We've also had 3 tags there. So now at the minute, I'm not looking at that short. The reason I'm not looking at that short because this area could potentially now break away. I do have other areas that I can keep an eye on. But I was looking at that area there and thought, right, you know, if we lose this zone, potentially we are having that major drop below. And I put a short in. When it had hit that, lost that zone. My short's there. Small stop loss just above that high there. And I was aiming for 214. I think it was 214. It may have been a little bit more, 210, something like that. I was aiming for that area there. Zero stress. Zero stress in that trade. And it took 27th of May to the 4th of June. So around 2 week-ish, something like that. You know, and I get this move. I get a 22% move. from chilling. No stress at all. You know, even pulling my volume profile, I could see there were a high volume node here. We've also got the point of control, which it messed around at. And then eventually it did dip away from that point of control. And it's, you know, trading can be so easy, can be so less stressful without being sat on this chart here, this 1 minute chart here. Yeah. And you get that. You've shorted here, potentially, when it's come into there. So you've shorted there. And your main target is down in here at that zone. Great risk to reward. Don't get me wrong. Very good risk to reward. So, you know, you've shorted in there. It's had the rejection wick there. Your stop's above there. You're aiming for down in here. Say your first target is going to be these lows here, which you hit perfectly. So there's your target. There's your first target. You've hit that. Lovely. Yeah. And I'm thinking, yeah, next target's going to be potentially these lows here. A little bit lower. So we'll go there. There's my next target. Okay. So the move we've had. Let's have a look at the move we've had. So we've shorted there. We've hit the first target. 6%. Not bad at all. But say you only took 25% off that trade there. It's come, and you've put your stop at break even now. It's come all the way back 7% to take you out in what? How many minutes? 25 minutes. What it worth that stress? That tiny little move there? Or what it worth sitting on a 4-hour chart, letting it do its move, and zero stress at all? Me personally, that's so much more better than actually stressing about this. And you know, your first target's here. Nice and easy hit. Did it ever come back to break even? No. It never came back to break even. First target there. These lows in here. Because you know we're going to have many longs there. Putting the stop losses. Second target, these lows here. And then your final target back in to this supporting area. Prior resistance. Pretty easy. 25%, 25%, final 50. See, this is what gets me with, you know, scalping, intraday, and swing. So much easier to be letting that do that than sitting there all day, every day with your eyeballs wide open. Oh, I need this 1% move. I need to make $75 or $100, $200. What's the point when you can just let that roll, yeah, and make $1,000, $2,000, and just be relaxing over the next 2 weeks. Take one more trade after that. And you do exactly the same again. So in here, I think this is your lovely weekend manipulation. This is why I'm not really interested in trading weekends. But even in here, it's all in Saturday. Saturday holds the zone, big push up, retest of the zone, and then a 38% move. Pretty easy on times. I only really use times 5, times 10 potentially. You know, it's 220% there. Same with this move back up. You know, it's times 10, it's 380%. You don't even need to look at a chart again this week. See, this is what I'm saying about the scalping. Don't get me wrong, people are good at it. If you're good at it, do, you know, be my guest, do it. But if you're no good at it and you keep losing, or even when you're taking TP1 and then it goes back to break even and you keep losing on that, say I don't know, you've made $3 because it's come back to break even. What's the point? It does not comprehend in my head what's going on. So I'd think about that when you are scalping. These sort of moves are so much easier when you go into your daily chart, finding your support and resistance levels, bringing your volume profile up from the move, seeing where we're at. And, it's so much easier to do that than it is to sit there stressing, like I say. So, and I'm not saying don't do scalping. If you want to do scalping, it's your journey, not my journey. Remember that it's you that's doing it, not me. I'm doing my own thing. But just think about it next time when you think, yeah, I'm going to sit on this 1 minute chart all day, every day, and try and catch all these moves. And then you get that sort of candle there. You get a 9% candle in a minute. That it does not comprehend in my head. So think about it, guys. Think about it. Another request. Let's get some comments down it in the comment section. Let's get things going. I really want this channel to try and take off, because a lot of y'all know I'm not talking no fluff. I'm giving you it straight. I'm not like all these other influences, on X and things like that will chat absolute crap to you, because that's what they're doing. They're trying to shill their bags to you. So, like I say, it's your journey. Learn the charts, and you will be a better trader, and you will be profitable in the long run. So yeah, that's going to be it from me, guys. Don't forget, I've got all my links below in the description below. So, go take a look at that, and I will catch you in the next one. Happy trading, guys.